Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.
Vasishtha said, Rama, listen to another interesting legend to illustrate this. In a country known as Uttar Pandava, in whose forests sages dwelt, and whose villages were beautiful and prosperous, there reigned a king known as Lavana, who was a descendant of the famous king Harishchandra. He was righteous, noble, chivalrous, charitable, and in every way a worthy king. His enemies had all been conquered, and their followers could not even think of him without becoming feverish with anxiety. One day, this king went to the court and ascended the throne. After all the ministers and others had paid their homage to him, a juggler entered the court and saluted him. He said to the king, I shall show you something wonderful. As he waved a bunch of peacock feathers, there entered into the court a cavalier leading a very beautiful horse. He requested the king to accept it as a gift. The juggler requested the king to ride that horse and roam freely throughout the world. The king also saw the horse. Thereupon, the king closed his eyes and sat motionless. Seeing this, everyone assembled in the court became silent. Absolute peace reigned in the court, as no one dared to disturb the king's peace. Rama, after some time, the king opened his eyes and began to tremble as if in fear. As he was about to fall down, the ministers supported him. Dismayed to see them, the king asked, Who are you, and what are you doing to me? The worried ministers said to him, Lord, you are a mighty king of great wisdom, and yet this delusion has overpowered you. What has happened to your mind? Only they who are attached to the little objects of this world and the false relationships of wife and children are subject to mental aberrations. Not one like you, devoted to the Supreme. Moreover, only he who has not cultivated wisdom is adversely affected by spells, drugs, etc. Not one whose mind is fully developed. Hearing this, the king partly regained his composure. Thereupon, looking at the juggler, he trembled as if in fear and said to him, O magician, what have you done to me? You have spread a net of illusion over me. Truly, even the wise are overpowered by the jugglery of Maya, even as though I am still in this body. Within a short period, I experienced wonderful hallucinations. Turning to the members of the court, the king recounted his experiences during the previous hour. As soon as I saw the juggler wave his bundle of peacock feather, I jumped on the horse, which stood in front of me, and experienced a slight mental delusion. Then I went away on a hunting expedition. The horse led me into a desert where nothing lived, nothing grew, where there was no water and it was bitterly cold. I experienced great grief. I spent the whole day there. Later, riding that horse again, I crossed that desert and reached another, which was less dreadful. I rested under a tree. The horse ran away. I rested for some more time there, and the sun set. Frightened, I hid myself in a bush. The night was longer than an epoch. The day dawned. The sun rose. A little later, I saw a dark girl clad in black cloths, carrying a plate of food. I approached her and begged for food. I was hungry. She ignored me. I pursued her. At last she said, "I shall give you food only if you consent to marry me." I consented. Survival was the first and foremost consideration then. She gave me food and later introduced me to her father, who was even more dreadful to look at. Soon, the three of us reached their village, which was flowing with blood and flesh. I was introduced to all of them as a girl's husband. I was treated with great respect. They entertained me with dreadful stories, which were a source of pain to me. At a diabolical ceremony, I got married to that girl. Very soon, I had become a member of that primitive tribe. My wife gave birth to a daughter, the source of more unhappiness to me. In course of time, 3 more babies arrived. I became a family man in that tribe. I spent many years amongst this tribe, sufferings the agonies of a family man with a wife and children to feed and to protect. I cut firewood, and often I had to sleep under a tree at night. When the weather became cold, I hid myself in a bush in order to keep me warm. Pork was my staple diet. Times rolled, and I became old. I began to trade in meat. I took the meat to the villages on Vindhya mountain and sold the best part of it there. What could not thus be sold at a decent profit, I cut up into bits and dried in a terribly filthy place. When I was afflicted with hunger, I would often fight with others in the tribe for a piece of meat to eat. My body had become black as soot. Thus engaged in sinful activities, my mind also became inclined towards sin. Good thoughts and feelings had taken leave of me. My heart had shed all compassion, even as a snake sheds its slaw. With nets and other traps and weapons, I caused untold hardships to birds and animals. Clad only in a lion cloth, I endured every inclemency of the weather. Thus, I spent 7 years. Bound by the ropes of evil tendencies, I grew wild with anger and used abusive words, wept in misfortune, and ate rotten food. Thus, I lived for a long time in that place. I drifted like a dry leaf in the wind, as if my only mission in life was eating. There was a drought in that land. The air was so hot that it seemed to waft sparks of flame. The forest caught alight. Only ashes remained. People were dying of hunger. People chased after mirages, thinking there was water. They mistook pebbles to be balls of meat and began to chew on them. Some had even began to eat corpses. Some, while doing so, even chewed their own fingers, which had been soaked in the blood of those dead bodies. Such was their demented state of starvation. What was once a flourishing forest has been transformed into a huge crematorium. What was once a pleasure grove resounded with the agonies of the cries of dying. Thus, afflicted by famine, many people left the country and migrated elsewhere. Some others, deeply attached to their wife and children, perished in the land. Many others were killed by wild animals. I too left the country to go away along with my wife and children. At the border of the country, I found the cool shade of a tree. Tempted, and after putting down the little children I was carrying on my shoulders, I rested under the tree for a long time. The youngest of my children was quite small and innocent, and therefore was the dearest to my heart. With tears in his eyes, he demanded food. Although I told him that there was no meat to eat, in this childish innocence, he persisted in his demand. Unable to bear his hunger, I said to him in despair, "All right, eat my flesh." The innocent child said without thinking, "Give me." I was moved by the attachment and pity. I saw that the child was unable to endure the pangs of hunger anymore. I decided that the best way to end all these miseries was to end my own life. I raised a pyre with the help of timber I found nearby, and as I ascended that pyre, I shuddered and found myself in this court, being hailed and greeted by you all. As the king said this, the juggler vanished. The minister said, "Lord, he cannot be a juggler, for he was not interested in money, in a reward. Surely some divine entity wished to demonstrate to you and to all of us the power of cosmic illusion. From all this, it is clear that this world appearance is nothing but the play of the mind. The mind itself is but the play of the omnipotent infinite being. The mind is able to fool even men of great wisdom. Else, where is the king who is well versed in all branches of learning? And where is this bewildering delusion? Surely, this is not a juggler's trick, for a juggler performs for material gain. It is really the power of illusion. Hence, the juggler vanished without looking for a reward." Vasishtha said, "Rama, I was there in that court at that point of time, and so I know all this firsthand. In this manner, the mind veils the real nature of the self and creates illusory appearances with many branches, flowers and fruits. Destroy this illusion by wisdom and rest in peace." With this, we finish today's chapter. See you again.